Okay, welcome everybody to the latest Zoom conversation run by Leeds Theosophical Society. We've started to do these conversations with people with different types of knowledge and expertise in a number of different fields, esoterically and otherwise. And this afternoon, we're very delighted to welcome Pam Evans, who is well known to many of you. She is a former teacher. She's the author of many books aimed at children, which are really, really excellent, and I thoroughly commend them to you. She's also worked in the music industry in the distant past, but she's probably best known for her work over the last 22, 23 years with the Peace Mala, which she runs from her home in South Wales. And this has been a tremendously successful attempt at interfaith dialogue at a time when the world needs us much more than ever. And Pam was awarded an MBE, member of the British Empire, by the late Queen for her services to it. So welcome, Pam. Just before we came on air today, I just had a look on the internet and came across an organization called the Geneva Academy. And what I found out really shocked me. It said that in the world at the moment, there are 110 armed conflicts, some of which, such as in the Congo, have been going on for more than 50 years. The work you're doing, therefore, seems, particularly important. When you hear things like that and you see the things that unfold on our TV screens every day, does it dishearten you, or does it just make you more determined to carry on with these attempts to stop human beings maiming and killing each other to avoid conflict or to solve their conflicts? Does it depress you? Does it demoralize you, or does it somehow strengthen you?
Well, I would say, Tim, there are times when the whole situation of our world overwhelms me, and I am reduced to floods of tears and despair. Okay? And I believe we are entering a particularly dark time in our planet's history. However, we must not give up hope. And I firmly believe that we are not alone. We can go into a bit more of that. And so I work from a spiritual point of view, whereas I embrace all the faiths and I look for the eternal truths. And I ask for guidance, I ask for strength, and I just keep going. And something curious has happened recently, which started last summer, where I woke up in a startled state, not remembering a dream or anything, but realizing that a certain, shall I say, a presence, I don't know what he is, was with me. I call him the wizard. I am yet to find out who this is. And out of it has come another story for children, which you've read, and you have written a beautiful endorsement. Thank you. And the message of this is a very powerful one, I think, for young people, about the divine feminine. Right. I won't go into too much about it, but okay, something drives me. I don't know what it is. Something drives me, something is with me, something compels me to keep going. I don't have a choice in this somehow. And maybe this is my karmic, well, I think it is. I've been given this to get on with, okay? But it didn't come to its sort of exploding point until 9/11 and the terrible dark days of the aftermath.
What's the most challenging part of your work? Is it the fact that you're dealing with people who, by definition, are very, very embedded in their own faiths and unable to see outside the particular box they're in? Is that the main problem, or are there other more deep-seated things?
Well, Peace Mala has not been an easy journey, and it continues to not be easy. But the schools that have come on board, and the youth groups, and I think one adult group, or we might have lost them. But anyway, when I visit a Peace Mala school, I am struck immediately by the incredible energy of the place. It transforms it. And I've had several head teachers to write and explain what the project has meant to them and to the children. And it really is remarkable. It really is. There's like, I don't know, a transformation in how the young people interact with each other and their world. So I believe that even if it's only small numbers that are working with us across the UK, we are doing good, and we have to keep on at it. A cousin of mine who died a number of years ago, she was a spiritualist, and I was a little bit wary of all of that. But anyway, I remember Cheryl saying to me, Pam, you're a light worker. I said, really? I'd never heard of the expression. Yes, you are a light worker. You have been chosen. And when I went to my very first Theosophical summer school, which was in Nottingham University, and I can't even remember when that was, I remember a lady sitting in the garden with me, coming out to find me and saying something much along the same lines. And I met her again when we had Theosophical Summer School, the year of the Olympics, and I can't remember where that was, in north of England somewhere, some fabulous university, can't remember. She approached me again and she said, be very careful. You have been chosen. Don't allow yourself to be burned out. Those of us who are driven, can become workaholics. And no, you've got to take time to breathe, to step back. So we do whatever we can, Tim, do whatever we can. Even Mother Teresa said, we can't change the world, but each one of us can contribute. Yeah, no matter how small it is, each one of us can contribute. And I think that's the answer. If we all keep contributing to the light, to the compassion that is needed, and sending it out, don't give up. And a dear friend of mine, he's retired now, he was the former Catholic Bishop of Menevia, which is a big chunk of Wales. And Bishop Tom was a great fan, he still is, of the Peace Mala project, God bless him. He said to me, never underestimate the power of prayer. So there you are. I know Theosophists don't pray, or I don't think they do, but I do. I ask for help. I ask for help. We all need it. Yes, Tim.
I certainly think some theosophists pray because some theosophists still have a connection to Christianity or to other religions. And I wanted to ask you, to what extent do you think that religions in the modern world are benevolent, or the opposite? Do you believe that overall they exert an influence for good on the world?
Tough one. Some organized religions are very oppressive and controlling. We know that through history. You've only got to look at it. And sadly, from my personal experience, certain, shall I say, evangelical setups within the Christian faith, evangelical, Pentecostal, biblical literalists, shall I put it that way, can be dark and controlling, and they're in the dark ages. I remember before the Peace Mala project even began, and I had taken over the Department of Religious Studies at the last school I taught in, I had organized a big interfaith cultural festival, which was a great success. And I'd asked the school cook to please make a vegetarian buffet. That was it. Because, of course, we were having people from different faiths there. We were having people from the Jewish, Islamic, Buddhist, Hindu, Sikh, goodness knows what coming. And I felt that was the safest thing to do. And I went down to see her, to thank her, because the food was magnificent. Excuse me for coughing. As I started to leave the office, she stopped me. She said, "Pam, aren't you afraid?" So I turned and I looked at her and I said, "Afraid of what?" "Well, of what's going to happen to you when you die." "Oh, goodness," I said. "I think that's in the hands of the Almighty." "Oh, no, but all this interfaith stuff you're doing, it's not good, you know. Don't you want to be with Jesus?" So I looked at her and I said, "I believe I already am with Jesus. And I believe in building bridges of peace, not walls of division." And I smiled and I left the room. There's other stories I can share with you. Some of you who know me know this already. Again, this was before the Peace Mala project even began. There was an angry letter to the school concerning a lesson I had done on Ganesh Ganaputi with a special needs class. And the father, it was almost illiterate, this letter. It looked like, "I am a boring again Christian," born again, I think is what he meant to say. But anyway, whatever. Huge complaint. I apparently had managed to invoke Satan and the demons. And goodness me, I'd even managed to send the demons home with the child. Now, actually, that happened shortly after Peace Mala. Yeah, right. Because Archbishop Roman, who became the Archbishop of Canterbury, agreed to become patron of the project, and he was for 5 years. And I remember going up to Lambeth on one occasion and telling him about this incident. And he looked at me and one eyebrow went up and he said, "Oh, you are powerful. We're going to have to keep an eye on you." And then, of course, he burst into laughter. It's absolutely preposterous. But it was that. And a year after we launched Peace Mala, the evangelical Christians of Llanelli, where the school was, and the Baptists got together and wrote a letter of complaint to the Director of Education of Carmarthenshire, demanding that I be removed from my job. I was totally unfit to teach the subject. And what's more, the Peace Mala project was the biggest threat to the Christian faith that they had ever encountered. God help us. They didn't like what I'd written against the first red bead. And all I had done was, of course, to quote Jesus, but I did quote his toughest message, which is, well, anyway.
Okay.
That's enough. Yes, there's been a roller coaster. And yeah.
So when you have these events where you get people from different faiths gathering together, and you'll get a Muslim, various Christians, Hindus, Sikhs, others, what actually happens at these events? Do people talk to each other? Do they try and engage in dialogue? Or are they suspicious of one another? Do they kind of dance around the handbags a little bit before they get to know each other? Or how does it operate?
Well, if you've seen any videos of the liturgies, or yeah, that's the correct word, the ceremonies, it's actually a sacred ceremony that takes place. And the first one was done at Llandaff Cathedral. Janet Holt and Tony were there. They came to that. And in the preparation of it, the head verger caused an absolute ructions and objecting to all sorts. But anyway, we did it. And I have to tell you, it was profound, it was beautiful, it was deeply spiritual. And the dean and verger came to me afterwards and said, "We've had a steep learning curve." So that was a good one. But we have had others where dirty tricks have been going on behind the scenes to make it as difficult as possible for us. But we have persisted and done it. So the faith representatives who have come from the launch of Peace Mala at the Temple of Peace Cardiff with Archbishop Rowan, and the other things that we have done since, have met together with the deepest respect for each other. And I think that's wonderful. And of course, the children, the school children and the teenagers are involved as well. That's how powerful it is. And we get them to, there's a special candle lighting ceremony where the beads of the peace mala, the 14 religions represented, along with the big central one for the world, for everybody, they light it with a taper from the central one, where there's a special prayer that I've composed for that. And they hold it with the child or teenager and they pass it on to the next faith representative. So everybody is touching the light that has come from the central candle for world peace. And it goes along and it's very, very, very powerful. And of course, we have beautiful music that contributes to the atmosphere. So it works, Tim. This year, in September, for the first time ever, we're going to do that ceremony in a remarkable school here in Swansea. So we'll see how that goes, because it's going to be different. It's not going to be in a cathedral or a church this time. It's going to be in a school. So we'll see. But I think it's going to work.
Is it the ceremony and the nature of that ceremony which binds people together? Is that
Yes.
is that the glue which brings people together for that event?
I think so, Tim, because it's deeply spiritual. It is not a one particular faith at all. It's a spiritual bringing together and acknowledging that there are central truths in all spiritual paths and that we can all come together with those central truths. Yeah. And people sense it and they feel it. It touches them very deeply. There are others, of course, who won't come near us because they disapprove of what we're doing. I mean, I was even accused the year before last when we did it in central Swansea, where we had many, many difficulties. They planted somebody. I won't go into all the ins and outs of what was going on behind the scenes. It was unbelievable. But I was called down to the west door before the ceremony began to deal with something with a young man. And so I went and I said, what on earth is the problem? And he said, you do realize, don't you, that you are desecrating a sacred Christian space? So I looked at him in astonishment and I said, goodness me. And how? How are we doing that? And he said, well, you're bringing in pagans and witches. Ah, I said, witches. You do realize the word's been demonized. We looked a bit astonished. And I said, I said, the healers, the midwives, the herbalists, the wise women. The church perceived them as such a threat, didn't they? That they had to persecute, torture, drown, burn at the stake. And I looked him straight in the eyes and I said, you suggesting for a moment we need to do that again? And then I turned to one of my fellow former students who is a pagan. I said, Paul, I've got to deal with something down the other end now. I got to go. Will you deal with? And then there was young Olivia, who was representing the earth religions on that day. She's got a doctorate now. And I said, here's Olivia. She's a witch. Does she frighten you? And Olivia is very pretty. And she had the most beautiful green dress on. And she's very clever, of course. So I left them. I don't know what happened after that. But, you know, people have these things in their head or control and, oh, God help us is all I can say. But we mustn't give up. We carry on, Tim. We carry on.
How do we deal with this ongoing problem, which constitutes things on a number of levels? A, people reading their sacred texts in a literal way. B, regarding their own religion as being completely exclusive, even if it's one of the many tens of thousands of branches of Christianity. And C, people not looking at other religions at all because they think they're dangerous and toxic and deathly and the work of the devil. How do you deal with those three combined factors?
Yeah, well, I don't think you will never achieve anything with a person who's totally locked into that way of thinking. However, this is where education is vital. And this is why the Peace Marler Project, working through schools in particular, is so important. And now, thank God, the national curriculum, I mean, I introduced world religions way back in the 70s. I was causing trouble then. But now, the 6 major faiths that exist here in the UK have to be taught by law, and there must be no bias from the teacher. Yeah. And young people, children should be encouraged to explore and ask loads of questions. And this is what I always did with them. Ask, ask, ask. And I told the kids, I said, never slam the door shut. There are many things we don't understand. Keep a little gap open. You never know what's the other side. Keep searching, keep asking, keep questioning. I mean, most recently, I was asked to go up to the school that's going to host our Interfaith World Peace event this September. The youngsters there, so these were 10-year-olds, the teacher said they've got so many, they'd already started the Peace Marler project and they've had our first accreditation since then. They want to ask you loads of questions. So, because they wanted to know, did I belong to a particular religion? Did I believe in God? What did I think God was? And on and on and on and on. So I think the first thing I said to them was, look, this is complicated stuff, but I'll try. I tell you what, I said, don't think of God as like a sort of Father Christmas in the sky. Well, they all erupted into roaring laughter, of course, so that was a good start. And then I said, do you know that God is in all of us and is in everything? So the jaws were dropping and a few kids, what? They were going like that. I said, yes, yes, yes. God's inside me. Absolutely, I said. The divine spark is in you, in me, in everybody. If you've got a cat or a dog or even a canary or whatever, yes, God is in everything. And the trees and the flowers. So it really got them thinking. So then they had a bit of a break and had to go outside. And one lad came back into the classroom as if he was on fire. Come out, come out, come out. And this school is on the side of a hill. Out we went. He said, look. And there was the most magnificent rainbow across the valley and across the mountains. I said, there you are. I said, that's God speaking to us, saying, don't give up. Don't give up. All is well. And there you are. So I've gone around it in a strange way, but what I'm trying to say, Tim, is that education is the way forward to get young people thinking, asking questions and exploring. We can't do anything with adults who are locked in their own rusty boxes. They've lost the keys.
Yes, I think it was last year or maybe the year before, I was sitting in my front room one afternoon. There was a knock on the door. It was somebody I hadn't seen for years and years and years, someone I went to school with. And this man had spent his life as a Baptist minister. And I said, what brings you up to Yorkshire? Because he lives now in London. I think he's just retired from the ministry. And he said, oh, a friend of mine has just died and now he's gone to live in heaven with Jesus. And I said, oh, fine, okay. And he said, what do you do now? And so I pulled out a copy of my book, Secrets of Infinity, and sort of gave it to him, and he kind of flicked it and then just literally put it down as if I'd offered him a dead rat or something like that. And he then started edging towards the door. That was the last I saw of him, because clearly he literally, I mean, he was like this at school, and his parents were very religious. He's a Baptist as well, and they seem to be particularly austere about these things. Anyway, that's by the by. The next question I wanted to ask you, there's a lot of talk, and has been for some years, about this idea of a world religion. Alice Bailey and others talk about it. Do you think such a thing is possible, or is it even desirable that we do have a world religion?
As I say, religion is like a two-edged sword, isn't it?
Or is it more called spirituality rather than
Ah, that's better. That's a better word. I remember the teenagers that I worked with all those years ago and talking with them. I remember one girl saying to me, you know, miss, I'm not religious at all, but I am spiritual. And she explained to me what she meant by that. And a lot of the others could resonate with it. And I said, yes. And I think that's what is important. Because I said, if you join a particular religion with its rules and dogma and whoever is in control, you may find conflict. Yeah? Especially if you have a questioning mind. And remember, we human beings, hopefully, are evolving and progressing and learning spiritually. So the more we learn, the more that we learn, the more we're going to question. And so the more we're going to question, then the leaders of the religions are not going to like it, are they? So when I studied theology, we were given the opportunity to choose a religion outside of the Abrahamic faiths. And Lord knows why or what possessed me, but I decided to look into what we call Hinduism. And of course, in those days, there was no internet, there was hardly anything on it. There wasn't even a temple in London, but something was pulling me. And so I believe I wrote to the Indian embassy in London, who put me in touch with the Indian Society or whoever. And so it was like correspondence coming through the post. And all I have to tell you is that what I started discovering to prepare for my dissertation just, wow, opened my mind. And I thought, God, this is astonishing. The whole concept of the divine being throughout the whole cosmos in everything that is. And that within everything is Atman, yes? And God, it was fantastic. I'd never heard of reincarnation. I'd never heard of the law of karma and avatars. And I think what particularly struck me, which I thought was rather fabulous, was the Shakti. Ooh, you know, the cosmic, the energy, the ability, the strength, the power, everything that permeates, everything that is. And Hindus call her the great divine mother, who is responsible for all of creation, who brings about change. And I thought, wow. I then discovered, even within Hinduism, and if anybody knows any Hebrew, that we have in the Old Testament something referred to as, oh God, my brain has gone. It's what we call the Holy Spirit. What is it? Shekinah, the Shekinah. And I have asked my Jewish friend about this. I said, this is a feminine word, isn't it, Norma? Yes, you're right, you're right. And I've tackled certain Christian priests about this. Because anyone who goes to a Catholic or an Anglican or Orthodox liturgy, when it comes to talking about the Holy Spirit, they refer to the Holy Spirit as Lord. It's completely wrong. The Holy Spirit is the divine feminine energy.
Well, this is where the terminology often becomes a barrier and a problem, doesn't it? Because people mean different things by the same words. For example, if people talk about soul or spirit, people have vastly differing definitions of what that actually is. But just to revert to this idea of religions, there's a man called Swami Yogi Shwarananda, who Paul knows much better than I am. He's based in India and Sri Lanka. But ironically, he comes over to talk to senior clergy about what the Sermon on the Mount actually means. And here we have, a holy man from India. And I was once talking to him about religions, and he said, "Oh, religions, it's just like choosing which football team you support." I thought there was something quite opposite about that. Anyway, let's move on to another important part of your life and another crucial part of your work, which is, I suppose, principally aimed at children. And you've written, I don't know how many books, but what, 10, 12 books, something like this now?
Oh, no, not as many as that, Tim. When I produced this one on Madame Blavatsky. I wanted to remind us all, do you mind if I read the opening of the Blavatsky book?
Please do, please do.
Okay, so I was sort of prompted to do this because when I discovered Madame Blavatsky all those years ago, wow, I was absolutely fascinated and intrigued, and I thought, what an incredible human being, and what an amazing life. Somebody should write something for children about this. And I kept saying it in Theosophical summer school and with various people, and nothing was happening. And then one day, well, I did this. And I started it off by saying this. Like all clever children, Helena Petrovna asked lots of questions. Where do we come from? Does the universe go on forever? How are galaxies and stars made? How old is planet Earth? Is there a God? What happens when we die? Have I been here before? Do angels exist? Are ghosts real? Where do we go to when we sleep? Now, I think that is how young children think naturally. The curiosity is there. What happens beyond that depends on who they meet. In my family, there wasn't anyone who could help me with any of those questions. You know, I didn't have, what was his name? Prince Pavlovna Dolgorukov, who she met in her grandmother's father's library, wherever it was. I had nobody like that. I remember asking a friend of the family, Uncle Jack. He wasn't really an uncle, but anyway, I remember on Gower one summer, I said, Uncle Jack, what happens when we die? And I think I was about 8 or 9. And he just looked at me and he said, nothing. And I said, nothing? Nothing. He said, we're like cabbages in the ground, and when we're done for, that's the end of it. So that was Uncle Jack. I don't know. I never asked my parents. The question never arose. And it wasn't until my mother's eldest sister passed that they told me that Auntie Betty had been quite psychic and that she read tea leaves. And I said, why on earth didn't anyone tell me? I would love to have spent time with her, but I didn't. And so it took a long time. But discovering the ancient Egyptians, I must bring them in if you don't mind. I discovered a book discarded on the village green where I grew up. It wasn't an attractive book. It was, the spine was broken and stuck with black electric tape, and it was maroon and small print and black and white photos, rather boring. I don't know where the book came from, but I took it home. And I went up to my bedroom and I started reading, and I was instantly hooked. Don't ask me why. The ancient Egyptians, when I discovered that there was a mummy in Swansea Museum, good Lord, that was it. That started it. And in those days, Tim, it was safe to go on the bus. And I used to go into, I must have been such a strange child, on the bus to Swansea Museum to see the mummy. And I discovered that his name, he was Hor, H-O-R. He was a clothier priest and a scribe of the god Atum. And anyway, one Saturday I was approached by the curator, and he said, you like this Egyptian stuff, don't you? I said, oh yes, it's wonderful. Ah, and he said, well, I tell you what, would you like to meet an Egyptologist? So I looked at him and he said, do you know, he said, Dr. Kate Boss-Griffiths is here today and she can read hieroglyphs. Well, can you imagine? My eyes must have been like saucers. And I remember it vividly. He took me to the big reading room with books going up to the ceiling and big long wooden tables. And there she was. Now, Kate Boss-Griffiths Her mother was Jewish, and she'd escaped from the Nazi, the atrocities in Germany, landed up in Wales, married a Welshman, and landed up in Swansea and became, in the Department of Classics, I think it was, brought to Swansea. I think it's 5,000 artifacts that are now in the Egyptian Centre in the Taliesin part of the university. But I would say my fascination with the ancient Egyptians. Now, what was that all about? I don't know.
Well, it could be memories of previous life.
Well, who knows? Who knows? But I slowly, bit by bit, started discovering things for myself. And as I said, Hinduism had a profound effect on me. And then after that, Buddhism, where I encountered my first Buddhist teacher, Geshe Damcho Yonten, who escaped from Tibet with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And so now I started exploring Tibetan Buddhism. And again, more answers. Things were being answered. I'll share something. Some of you know this too. In my late 30s, I went through a very, very dark period of my life where things were in a mess. I won't go into the details of what, how, or what was going on. But I was in an extremely dark, depressed place, not knowing which way to turn. And I do remember very vividly, and Lord knows why, looking up and saying, and as for you, you don't even care. Now, was this an argument with God or what? I don't know what it was, but I was in despair. And now then, I will never forget this. I came home from work with a friend, went into the kitchen to make a cup of tea. How long does it take to fill a kettle, let it boil, and make tea and bring it into the lounge? I don't know how long it takes. I'm in the lounge. I get up off the sofa, I walk across, I go to the window, I look across the garden into the sky. How do I describe what happened next? Difficult, but I'll try. And I hope you won't dismiss me now as completely mad. But I sensed that I was suddenly surrounded, embraced, I don't know what. It was an energy that was profoundly strong, but exquisitely gentle. And it was pure love and peace, the like of which not of this dimension. Let's hope that makes some sense. I don't know. I received a message telepathically. And again, this might sound completely bonkers, but I know it wasn't in English. Now, how mad does that sound? My mind was processing whatever it was that I was receiving. And in essence, it said the following 3 things. I am with you. I am always with you. You do not understand now, but one day you will. That was pretty powerful. My friend came in with the tea. I don't know what I looked like, but I'm sure I must have been in a state of shock, and said, what's happened to you? And I tried to explain. So that was in my late 30s. I'm now 74. A few years have gone by. And I reflect back to that and I think, yes, as time has gone by, I have started to understand more. And of course, at some point in my life, Theosophy arrives. So that opened up more again.
Yeah, I was going to turn to that because clearly that you do be smaller. I mean, it's a synthesizing operation. And this is one of the crucial things about Theosophy. When it came along 150 years ago, almost, it did provide persuasive, comprehensive, and a panoramic view of the universe, which was in contrast to the prevailing religions and the scientific materialism, which was only going to get more materialistic after the inception of Theosophy. But it's introduced explanations of ourselves and the universe for people who do ask those questions and who are not satisfied by the conventional answers that they're given by philosophy, religion, or science. So I see Theosophy as being an absolutely crucial strand of world thought. And obviously Theosophy has had its own problems over the years, one sort or another. But I see it as being something that's absolutely pivotal to where we are now as people, and particularly people who are starting to develop new ideas about what spirituality really is and what constitutes human beings other than the flesh and bone. Do you see Theosophy in that same way?
Yes, I do. And coming back to the little book for young people on Madame Blavatsky, you know that I tried this out before it was published and before I even sent the text to the Blavatsky Trust. Before I did that, I was invited into one of our local Peace Marler schools over in Port Talbot, as it is. It was just at the end of COVID, and I thought, well, how's this going to go? And they brought all of the senior children. So these were 10 and 11-year-olds into the school library. They opened all the windows because we were still tail end of COVID. And they said, now be prepared, Pam. You have a very mixed ability bunch here now. You've got some high-flying, intelligent youngsters, and you've got others with special needs. I said, that's fine. So I read them the story, and the kids were brilliant. And at the end of it, the questions that were tumbling in were fantastic. What the children were particularly interested in was reincarnation. That was the big thing that gripped them. And a number of them, what they were explaining or sharing with me was what we call déjà vu. And I said, yes, 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 yes. And then after that, the children wrote letters to me about the book and what they felt. And those were sent to me. And I thought, oh my God, this is wonderful. So this little book struck a chord. I didn't know what in God's name the teachers were going to make of this, because they'd never heard of her. And when this book was finally published and printed by Kingsbridge Printing, Gorsinan, the boss of Kingsbridge Print, I remember him ringing me up and he said, Pam, who the hell is this Madame Blavatsky? So we had a chat about it. My God, he said, she was a hell of a girl, wasn't she? I said, yes, she certainly was. So just through this little book, I'm trying to encourage this with all of our Peace Marler schools. So a few of them have got it. And so if they have this little book, it opens up lots of questions for young people, and it also introduces them in a very gentle way to the messages of Theosophy.
Yeah, I always find it very ironic that the woman who was arguably the most influential woman of the 19th century, 99.9% of people have never heard of her,
Yeah.
and
I
this is
know.
one of those strange anomalies. And it's not just because she's a woman, it's because her ideas were so many light years ahead of the time and everything. Can we sort of wind this up by my asking you what you're actually doing at the moment and what activities you've got on the go for this year and in the immediate future?
Well, I'm hoping that the new story that I've written, which you have read and written a lovely review of, thank you, Return of the Goddess, which was quite a journey in itself, starting off in the, in Pembrokeshire, the Preseli Hills, where the Bluestones come from, and the whole thing that's evolved out of that, landing up eventually in Galicia to Santiago and beyond. My God, what a journey that's been. I'm waiting for the artist who said she will do the front cover. I'll have to give her a prod. And I'm hoping we can publish it and again share that with schools, because the messages in Return of the Goddess, I think, are very, very powerful and of immediate need for our world, for young people. You know what the story says, and you know the message of the wizard too in it, but I won't go into that. So that's a big project that I hope we're going to get off the ground somehow. We are preparing with a local school who are going to host our Interfaith World Peace event in September. That's exciting. Next week, one of our schools over in Nice has achieved our highest award of platinum. So there'll be a big celebration with the Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, Mayor, the member of the Welsh Senedd and whoever and whatnot. So that's happening there. Another school in Mid Wales have achieved our gold. So hopefully that will happen. And closer to home with you, Manchester, I had a phone call yesterday where exciting things that take place at the monastery in Gorton, where, gosh, I can't remember, a good many years ago, we had a Peace Mala Interfaith and Education Festival. They're muttering and talking about the possibility of that happening again, maybe next year. I don't know. We'll see. And other schools in that city. And closer to home again, Leeds. Co-op Academy. I don't know if you're aware of them, Tim, but they are in Leeds. They are working to get the first accreditation, bronze. So there you are. We carry on working mainly with schools and anybody else who wants to work with us.
Okay, Pam, thank you very much indeed for that. And congratulations on everything that you do, because it's so important in this troubled world now. So thank you all for participating in this latest Zoom presentation from Leeds. And may I wish you a very good week and a prosperous and happy time. So from Leeds, goodbye to everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Thank you.